let's dive into the sprawling, chaotic, and absolutely brilliant middle chapter of The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. This is where the story just explodes. The quest splinters, the stakes go through the roof, and the real war for Middle-earth finally kicks off. So, remember how it started? It was pretty straightforward. One group, one mission. Well, forget that. The Fellowship is shattered. Our 9 companions are now scattered, and each of them is on a path that's going to decide the fate of their entire world. This isn't just a quest anymore. It's a war, and it's being fought on 3 totally different fronts.
So let's start with the heart of it all, Frodo and Sam. I mean, these guys are carrying the one thing that can destroy everything, and they're walking straight into the enemy's backyard. But their journey, it's about to get a whole lot weirder. Right now, they're completely and utterly lost in this rocky maze called the Emyn Moil. But here's the thing, they're not alone. There's a creature, one that's been twisted and consumed by the ring for centuries, and it has been silently hunting them. And that creature, of course, is Gollum. Gollum's obsession finally gets the better of him, and he attacks. But, surprise, the hobbits actually overpower him. And this is where Frodo does something pretty incredible. Instead of killing him, he shows mercy. He spares Gollum's life, and in return, forces him into a pact to be their guide to the Black Gate of Mordor. But you gotta listen really closely to how he phrases his oath. He doesn't swear to Frodo. No, he swears to serve the Master of the Precious. His loyalty isn't to a person at all, it's to the ring itself. And that right there creates probably the most fragile and dangerous alliance you can possibly imagine. And yeah, this is the whole problem, isn't it? Gollum is completely fractured. You've got the pitiful Smeagol, who actually seems grateful for Frodo's kindness, but then you have the treacherous Gollum, who would kill him for the ring without even thinking twice. This constant war inside his head makes him the ultimate wild card on their journey. Okay, so while Frodo and Sam are sneaking towards Mordor, our second group is on a totally different mission. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are in a desperate chase, hunting the Uruk-hai who took Merry and Pippin, and that chase leads them deep into the kingdom of Rohan. They run into the riders of Rohan, who give them some pretty grim news. The entire Uruk-hai warband has been wiped out. For a second, it seems like all hope is lost. But then, they find it. A tiny glimmer of hope, little hobbit tracks leading away from the battle and into the ancient and seriously feared Fangorn forest. Deep inside the forest, they're stopped by a wizard in white. At first, they're terrified. They think it's Saruman, the traitor. But it's not. It's Gandalf. He survived the fall, he beat the Balrog, and he has come back to Middle-earth, reborn as Gandalf the White, way more powerful than ever. And his first words are a huge relief. The hobbits are safe. But that relief doesn't last long, because his news is dire. Saruman, the head of his own order, has joined Sauron. He's breeding a massive army of Uruk-hai to just wipe out the world of men, and he's starting with Rohan. The problem is the kingdom is totally vulnerable because its king is poisoned by Saruman's influence. So Gandalf marches them straight to the capital, Edoras, and there they find King Theoden, who looks like this withered old man, completely poisoned by the whispers of his advisor, Grima Wormtongue, who, surprise, is Saruman's spy. In a flash of power, Gandalf just shatters the spell, freeing the king's mind and bringing him back to his old self. Okay, this brings us to our third and honestly most unexpected storyline. We finally get to see what happened to Merry and Pippin in Fangorn Forest. Turns out they didn't just find a safe place to hide, they literally stumbled upon one of the oldest beings in all of Middle-earth. They meet Treebeard, who is an Ent. And what are Ents? Well, they're basically ancient shepherds of the forest, living, walking trees who have just been watching the world go by for thousands of years. They are very, very slow to act, super deliberate, and have stayed out of the business of men and elves for a long, long time. So after a very, very long council, it's called an Entmoot, where the Ents debate what to do about this big war that's brewing, they finally come to a decision. And that decision is, it's not their fight. They're staying neutral. You can just imagine the hobbits' frustration. But the hobbits, they've got one last clever trick up their sleeve. Pippin manages to guide Treebeard south, towards Isengard. And when Treebeard sees what Saruman's war machine has done, his beloved forest just reduced to stumps and ash, something inside him just snaps. That grief turns into a rage so powerful it wakes up the entire forest. And just like that, all three of our separate stories slam into each other in one explosive climax. As Theoden leads his people to the fortress of Helm's Deep for a last stand, all hell breaks loose across the land in three different places at once.
So the war just explodes everywhere. At Helm's Deep, you have a few hundred defenders getting ready to face Saruman's main army. At Isengard, the forest itself is marching on the traitor's fortress. And way down south, in the ruined city of Osgiliath, Frodo and Sam walk right into a battle between Gondor and Mordor. At Isengard, the Ents' revenge is just absolute. They are the forest's fury brought to life. They tear down the walls, they crush the orcs, and then, in this spectacular final move, they break the dam on the River Isen, flooding the entire valley and putting out Saruman's industrial fires for good. Meanwhile, the situation at Helm's Deep is, well, it's beyond desperate. They are facing an army of 10,000 Uruk-hai, an army bred for one single purpose: to kill. The walls are breached, the defenses are crumbling, and it really looks like all hope is lost. But Gandalf made a promise. He said, "Look to my coming at first light on the 5th day. At dawn, look to the east." And just as Theoden leads a final, hopeless charge, there he is. Gandalf appears on the ridge with thousands of Rohirrim at his back. Their charge down that slope is one of the most iconic moments ever, and it completely shatters the Uruk-hai army. And while all of this is happening, Frodo gets captured by Faramir, Boromir's brother. He gets dragged to the front lines in Osgiliath and comes face to face with a Nazgul. The ring's temptation is just overwhelming. He almost puts it on, almost gives the whole game away, before Sam tackles him to safety. It is the closest he has ever come to being discovered. So, 2 great battles have been won. Saruman's threat is shattered. It is a massive, massive victory. But it's a fragile one, because the real enemy was never Saruman. Sauron is still out there gathering his strength, and for our ring-bearer, the journey has just become more dangerous than ever before. So in the aftermath, Rohan is safe, but maybe more importantly, Faramir resists the temptation that his own brother couldn't. He sees the evil of the ring, and he lets Frodo go, but this act of mercy has a cost. To save him, Faramir's men capture Gollum, and in that moment, Frodo's fragile bond of trust with his guide is completely broken, reawakening that treacherous side of him. And really, this is the thought we're left with. Sure, they survived Helm's Deep and the destruction of Isengard, but Sauron wasn't involved in either of those fights. The real enemy hasn't even shown his hand yet. So as Frodo, Sam, and a now very resentful Gollum turn towards the mountains of Mordor, you just have to wonder, was all of that just the prelude to the real war?